Hi there, this is Dr. Kimberly Olson, licensed clinical psychologist. If you're new to the channel, welcome. I'm really glad you're here. If you're returning, glad to see you, and I thank you so much for your support. This next video is probably going to appeal mostly to my students, but after sort of looking at it with my husband, he made a really good point, which is it applies to really everyone. Now, what I will share with you is that it's a little different than my previous videos to the extent that it's going to require an attention span beyond 37 seconds, which is one of the things that we seem to be losing is our attention span. But I think it's worth it. I think it's worth going on the journey. I presented a small portion of this at a TED Talk, and it was really beneficial, but I certainly didn't get to express all of the nuances and things that I'm really experiencing and what I found in my research about social media and the impact on relationships. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Social media and the impact on relationships. Now, I want to let you know that I actually came to this very, very slowly. I was one of those people that delayed joining any kind of social media. Okay, first of all, I'm one of those people that doesn't really give into fads very quickly. And I didn't think that I had the time to even engage in social media. And so it was something that I put aside. And a lot of times I recognized that that was probably a smart move because I noticed pretty quickly that people got into conflicts on social media. And I knew I certainly didn't need any of that in my life. However, pretty quickly, I started to notice that I felt left out. And that's because of the peeps. I would talk with somebody on the phone or see somebody at dinner and they would say, did you see the Christmas party so-and-so had? Did you see the cute outfits so-and-so wore on Halloween? Did you notice that so-and-so took a trip? Do you see how wonderful this person looks since they've lost a lot of weight and all those kind of things? And I would have to say, no. Because people were posting them on social media and not communicating them in traditional ways. And so instead of the folks that sort of went to social media communicating in both ways, like developing pictures and sending them to you like in the old days, or sending you a letter or a phone call or giving you a phone call, those things weren't happening. So I felt very much out of the loop. So I succumbed and I joined Facebook. And I did like the pictures. I liked the peeps. I liked seeing what was going on, especially with family and friends that are, out of town. I got to play a little bit catch up. I enjoyed that. But I quickly noticed that people were very evocative on social media. And what I mean by evocative is they would say and do things that are sort of designed to elicit emotion. And frankly, division. And it's not what was said, but how it was said. It was said in a way that people would never say to each other face to face, but people have keyboard courage and they get very impulsive. And so they start saying things in a way, again, that you would never, at least in polite company, ever say to somebody face to face. For example, why don't the 99% of us who aren't offended by everything quit catering to the 1% who are? Well, it must be nice to be part of the group that isn't being attacked. So, of course, there's this notion, the suggestion in this post is that if you're offended by something, then you must be offended by everything, and you must be very thin-skinned. Well, that's not offensive at all. Come on. Okay. And catering to the 1% who are, well, you might count yourself lucky that you're not a member of the 1% who are always being badgered on social media. Again, this is a very evocative way of saying something that actually could be a really cool discussion. So, for example, we could have a discussion about how much more open we are these days. about discussing things that are offensive and hurtful, whereas back in the day we didn't discuss them quite as often. And what are the strengths and weaknesses of that approach? We don't have to come at these topics from an attacking vantage point. And yet it does, I think, what it was exactly what it was designed to do, which is it divides. Here's another one. Dear all people, if you see a cop talking to any African American person, I know you better stop walking. You better stay right there till that cop gets back in their car and drives away. Let them know we are watching them and they are not alone. This is the least we can do. Wow. Nothing like saying that all cops are bad cops. Nothing like pigeonholing everyone and stereotyping them. And those police that are out there that are doing their jobs that risk their lives every day and are good cops, doesn't like throwing them into the batch of cops that are immoral and unethical. Now, could we have said this in a different way? Could we have said this in a way that doesn't call everyone who disagrees with your perspective racist, essentially? Okay. Could we have said instead, can we look out for each other and maybe be more mindful of interactions that we see among minority populations and law enforcement? See, again, it's not what's said, it's how it's said. And it's designed again to be divisive. It's very much sort of pro-cop, anti-cop. And the truth is that all of these issues are terrifically multifaceted. Okay, they're not black or white issues. And anytime we present things as black or white, we're going to get division and we're not getting the full story. And so these posts are not doing anything to help evoke change. All they're doing is evoking dissent. Here's a couple more examples. Sorry if my political posts offend you, but the future of my country is more important than your feelings. So that suggests that somebody's feelings are inconsistent with the country. If somebody is burdened by, I don't know, racism or anti-homosexual sentiments, that somehow is inconsistent with taking pride in your country. So, I mean, see how ridiculous this post is. Okay. And again, it intends to be very, very divisive. So you are either, again, someone who's for status quo, because these are the folks that are talking about the future of the country. Okay. Or someone who wants to have a discussion about some of the things that are going on that are in fact offensive that maybe we could use some work on. But again, we don't want to have a logical, rational conversation. What I have caught from social media is that people tend to really like to argue. They like to be evocative. I think sometimes it gives them a sense of power, maybe where they're in fact really powerless. And again, would never have the cojones to ever say these things to somebody's face. And thank God for that. But these are not designed to educate. And then finally, liberals hate leftists for the same reason you'd hate someone at a theater who kept yelling, "These are all actors. None of this is real." Liberals are trying to enjoy a fictional performance about their side being heroic protagonists, and leftists keep disrupting the illusion. So now we not only have smack talk going on between sort of the conservatives and the liberals, which, by the way, most of us are somewhere in the middle, but you'd never know it by these posts, and you'd never know it by how divisive media is. Okay. It seems like if you're watching Fox News, you're getting only the most ridiculous, preposterous, extreme example of a liberal that most people who call themselves liberal would go, "Oh, you can't be serious." Or you're watching MSNBC and you're getting only the most ridiculous, preposterous view of conservatives that you could ever imagine. Okay, but on this one from Caitlin here, her little post, well, let's just go to war then, liberal versus liberal, because again, it's all or nothing. You're either a hero or you're with us or you're against us. Okay, you either are a whiny little liberal or an insensitive conservative. And the truth is somewhere in the middle, and we all have traits of both. And again, when you have the opportunity, and it's one of the things I'm grateful for about being a therapist, about really listening to people, what you really get from them is that we have so much more in common than we do different. Most of us are not at the ridiculous extremes. Most of us have good common sense. Okay. And we recognize there's exceptions to every rule. And then we also recognize there's things that we need to be steadfast on. But again, you would never know this. We've divided ourselves into camps, which, by the way, is just what we needed. Come on. Okay. Politics used to be something that was sacred and private. You didn't discuss it. Okay. Today, it's finding out whose camp you're in and whether or not you're in my camp. And depending on how insightful you are, you may or may not be evocative towards people, even face to face. It's kind of sad because you'll even see this stuff sometimes coming on during, a family dinner or going out with colleagues or something. And you're just like, what the hell could you be thinking? I'm sitting right here, and I'm a member of the opposite camp of you, or at least if we define it the way social media does. And yet you just took a cheap shot at me, and you felt quite comfortable doing that. So are your politics more important than the relationship? Is that what you're saying? That your beliefs are more important than your respect for your family and friends? More important than your right to have a different opinion from somebody else? Okay, that's the American thing, guys, is the right to have difference of opinion. But again, it's not what we're saying. It's how we're saying it. And what gives you the right to spill this upon somebody from who's under another line of thought? Okay, you're not going to change their mind. All you're going to do is piss them off. All you're going to do is create conflict because they're going to feel disrespected. But think about how we even talk to each other, okay? You've probably heard, if you listen to conservative radio, the term libtards. Really? That's not supposed to be offensive? So suggesting that someone who has more of a leftist slant is retarded, because that's suggestion. Or if you're to the right and you're listening to liberal radio, okay, calling everyone who's conservative racist, that's ridiculous. That's just as preposterous as saying that a member of a group is less intelligent than you. Okay, we're all getting our facts from different sources, and that's why we're so divided. We don't have a lot of media integrity anymore. One of the things that I do at the gym to help sort of balance myself out, I mean, other than going to the gym itself, of course, but is I will watch Fox News, and then I'll watch MSNBC because both of them are there. I mean, they've got all the TV screens up there. And just watching what is presented versus what's not presented on each of those channels is profound. And the bend on it, the twist, okay? And they're all doing it, not just the other camp, because everybody's sure that the other camp is lying and promoting propaganda. And if you were smart and intelligent like me, you wouldn't think like that. Okay. But the truth is, anytime you're hearing extreme from either sides, you're being bamboozled. Okay. Because that's not where intelligence lies. Intelligence doesn't lie in black and white perspectives. It lies in understanding the gray, but gray is much more difficult, you see. See, it's easier for me to say this is bad and this is good. Okay. I'm thinking about when I was working in the jails, and some of the guards were just very, very concrete like that. This person's bad, this person is good. It's so much easier to work with somebody under that premise, because if you have to understand that, in fact, it's gray, that there were all kinds of circumstances and things that created this person, it's not so black or white. Okay, that doesn't mean I don't think they don't need to do life in jail. I'm not, or in prison. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying that gray requires abstract thinking. It requires thinking outside of your own little space, in your own little universe, in your own little thoughts. Okay, but we're not being asked to do that. We have become ever so tribal, which again is creating disconnection. So are we more connected or more disconnected today? So if you look at the green phone, for any of you that were around in the 70s, you recognize this. This was the pea green kitchen phone that everybody had. And by the way, folks, for my millennial folks, there was one usually, and it hung on the kitchen wall. And it had this little tail thing there. We called that a phone cord back in the day. And in houses where they needed a little more privacy, they would have an incredibly long phone cord. Okay. Maybe somebody had a phone in their bedroom, and in which case you'd pick up the phone and somebody would yell across the house, and the other person would say, I got it. And then the other person hung up. Okay, that was as fancy as we got back then. So what was cool about this though is that you had to answer it. I know some of you that have never experienced that must be freaking out a little bit, because you never knew what you were going to get. Okay. So you didn't really have a choice to not answer it, because hell, it could be your work. It could be your kid, could be your kid's teacher, but it could also be a salesperson. But you had to pick it up. And you sometimes had to deal with people on their terms, not your terms. Meaning that you might get a phone call and someone is hysterical and needs to talk to you. And you're going to have to take it and deal with it in their time right then and there, even if you're in the middle of prepping dinner or doing homework or whatever. You don't get to sort of do everything on your schedule and in your time. So we were more connected then. Okay, because again, we didn't get to create all the communication rules. It was very hard to ghost somebody in the 70s. Okay, because again, you had a choice to either answer your phone or not answer your phone, period. And everybody answered their phone because again, you don't know who it is. Could be a boss, could be something important. So now if you look at the picture below the ugly green phone, you see no caller ID. And I certainly know people who won't even answer their phone if it says no caller ID. Now I understand this because there's a lot of spam and there's a lot of nonsense going on over the phone, but it does take away something. It means that the phone becomes to our discretion and our convenience, and reaching out to somebody is in our time, as opposed to maybe when that person needs us. Okay. What about the middle pictures? Okay, so we've got folks socializing, they're face to face. So there's all kinds of things I know about you just from meeting face to face. From the simplest things, like I know whether or not you showered today. Okay, I can see the nuances in your facial reactions. I can adjust my tone based on your immediate feedback. Okay, so a lot of things that end up in misunderstanding under social media could have been easily corrected if they were face to face. And the same is true, by the way, of texts. Okay. So many relationships have become problematic because of a misunderstanding over a text, over the way the material was presented. But if you and I are talking face to face, I can see it in your face if you're confused. I can see it in your response, and I can immediately clarify. I apologize. I've got a little bit of a cold, so I'm having to sip on coffee. Now, if you look at the picture below, nobody's talking to anybody. Everybody's talking on their phone. And it looks like they're probably in some sort of lobby there, maybe for a doctor's appointment or something. And it isn't that I was highly engaged before cell phones with people at the doctor's office, but it is to suggest that you had much more of an understanding of what was going on with the people around you. One of the saddest things that I see frequently at the doctor's office is people with kids, and mom is completely consumed with her phone and not engaged at all with her kids and what's going on in the room. Like, it's more important to get likes from social media than it is to get likes from your kids. Okay. We've all become sort of addicted to that reinforcement or that positive attention, which tells you a little bit of how empty I think we are as a society, that we're having to reach out and grasp so hard for approval and for attention. Now, if you look at the last set of pictures here, we've got three girlfriends up there talking. And again, everybody gets an opportunity to put their 2 cents in. You get to read people's facial expressions. You get to pause. You notice that if something is said with an angry tone, if something's said with a hurt tone or a happy tone, or if somebody's being silly or sarcastic, you catch that all from talking one-on-one. And those relationships tend to have some depth because you really know each other. I want to propose to you that thinking that you know anybody from social media is a complete illusion. Okay. You know things based on people's presentation. You know things about people based on whether or not their actions are consistent with their words. So if, for example, I could claim to be a very staunchly religious person, but you and I know each other in the community, and let's say I am doing something not very good with my marriage, okay? So you would know that I was a hypocrite. I'm not posting that on social media, though. I'm probably just posting my philosophies on religion and things, and of course, putting my best foot forward, not mentioning, all the times that I've fallen short or been unkind. But again, we don't see those sides to people. Okay, we get to edit what people know about us. Think about that. Okay, there's not an edit button. I mean, certainly we all have social persona, but there's not an edit button in face-to-face social interactions. You faux pas, you deal with it. When it comes to social media, you don't like the way your hair looks, you could adjust the lighting, okay? And that misrepresentation in and of itself, how we only see the very best pictures of people, that's deceptive. So you're falling in love with an illusion, okay? And you've developed, I never heard the term, a brand prior to social media, or what you want other people to see about you, okay? And yet it's in our very flaws that we develop intimacy. Intimacy is knowing the good news and the bad news about people and loving them anyway. It's knowing them fully. It's not just knowing a person without their flaws or only their best foot forward. In fact, that's not knowing another human being at all. It's an illusion. I also see a lot of sort of special thinking and pathologizing going on. And I can tell you as a clinical psychologist, this really, really bothers me. We don't go to school for 10 years, well, with internships, residency, all that kind of stuff, just to have the University of YouTube offer a 5-minute tutorial on these things. And then all of a sudden everyone feels entitled to diagnose other people. And it's crazy. And it's sad, and it's misuse of knowledge. It's like just enough knowledge to be dangerous. And then we come up with our own sort of fake pop psychology terms. And this is one that I started seeing a lot on Facebook in particular, which is this idea of empaths. Now, I found it interesting because as a therapist, of course, we talk about the importance of empathy, or the ability to feel with someone or to experience a situation from another person's perspective. Okay? That's what empathy is, or being an empathic person. There is no such thing as an empath. It's a phony construct. Okay. The way that it's described is people who are very sensitive, people's real feelings when looking at their pictures. So if I'm an empath, allegedly, I know your real feelings when I'm looking at pictures, which may or may not be the case. Because remember, we process information from our own experiences. Okay. We process the motives of others through what our motives would be. And processing information from our own perspective and projecting it onto other people is not a trait of empathy. It is a trait of covert narcissism. Okay. So if I think I really know what's going on with you and what your motives are, I am not being empathic, I'm being narcissistic. Okay. Because I think I have some sort of special understanding and knowledge of things. And the truth is, we really don't know. Okay. So when we're looking at people's real feelings when looking at their pictures, I mean, it could be the person they've had gas that day. Maybe they had to wait in line for 3 hours to get that photo done. You don't know what's going on for that person. Okay. You can only postulate and speculate, but it's that sense that you do know that makes it narcissistic. Okay. You don't know. You know what your experiences are. You know how you feel about things. You can get to know somebody really, really, really well, and you can begin to guess what their perspective will be. You can get to know somebody well enough to be able to read their face because you know what the little nuanced facial expressions mean with somebody. Okay. You might be an extra sensitive person who sees someone who you perceive as sad and you pick up on that right away. That just means you're sensitive. Okay. And it probably means that you have some familiarity with sadness. That's why you know it so well. Energy and intentions through text messages. Bullshit. That is one of the most covertly narcissistic things I have ever heard. You do not know somebody else's energy or intentions. All right. I don't know how to break this to you, but you're not that special. And the belief that you are is what tells me that you're not empathic at all. Okay. Happy from small things in life. Unspoken words and lies. I'm a walking lie detector. Certain events before they manifest, and anxiety from news and violent movies, which, by the way, makes sense if you're a sensitive person. Other things about empaths that we know, they fancy themselves to be very empathic. They like nature and animals, and a lot of the traits of empaths, again, are the complete overlap with a covert, or what we call a vulnerable narcissist, or somebody who, again, reads the world through their own emotions, through their own experiences, doesn't make a whole lot of effort to understand it from somebody else's perspective. I just know. And of course, the reason that those folks like animals so much is that animals don't make demands. Okay. Dog loves you no matter what. The dog is not going to pull you up short on your crap. They are loving, you can connect, and it's a beautiful thing. But again, that greater connection with that community doesn't necessarily mean anything about you other than maybe you struggle to get along with people. And then on the other side, what I'm seeing on YouTube, this isn't even like from therapists or anything. Everybody that you don't like is a narcissist. You're not qualified to diagnose this, guys. So every time I read a post about this, I do see traits, DSM traits, okay, in another person's behavior. I understand where somebody's coming from. I get and I know what gaslighting is and how painful that truly is. I know what it is to deal with a genuine narcissist and how absolutely heartbreaking and an absolute minefield of crap that you need to go through to get out of those relationships. I get that. I follow you. But not everybody you dislike is a narcissist. Okay. Everybody has some base level of narcissism, because it's what made you feed yourself this morning. It's what made you go to school. It's what makes you take care of yourself. Okay. If we didn't have a baseline of narcissism, we wouldn't take care of ourselves. So it's only things in extremes that are bad. And in order to qualify for a diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder, okay, you have to have, first of all, a set number of symptoms, and it has to be causing social and occupational impairment. Okay, so this whole idea of sort of over pathologizing everybody, it's out of sync, and all it does is divide. Because what it says is, if I don't like what you have to say, I'm just going to call you a narcissist, right? I might as well throw an F-bomb at you, because that's what I'm saying about you, okay? And I'm not qualified. Well, I am, but most people are not qualified to make those diagnostic impressions. And you certainly can't do that with anybody you're close to. Not even I, a licensed psychologist, am permitted to do that with anyone I'm close to, because you are not objective when we're talking about people, okay, that we're close to. We're not objective. I don't get to like diagnose my husband or something, okay, because we're not objective, and that would be considered unethical. So can we like kill the labels here? Okay, everybody is special to somebody. Okay, probably those people that you're ignoring while you're on social media, you're probably special to them. Okay, the kids, the husband, the wife, maybe people at work, the neighbors, your doggy, all those things. You are very special to those people and entities. Okay, but as far as having some magical charm, okay, we call that a schizotypal personality, or somebody who has odd or magical beliefs about their abilities. Okay, or if you don't like somebody, that they're automatically a narcissist, not so much. So let's get rid of the labels. So the empaths don't get to like feel holier than thou and more special, and therefore entitled to judge everybody. And not everybody that you dislike is a narcissist or borderline, whatever name calling we're doing this week from the DSM. So genuineness is required for connection. And I'm sorry that the word got cut off up there. So I could post on social media, look at the Sports Illustrated lady, okay, and say, this is me. Okay, if I was a little more savvy technologically, I could just pull the picture of her out, right? And you wouldn't see the whole Sports Illustrated cover. However, if you knew anything about me, you would know that I'm the grandma in the bottom picture. Okay, and it's important to me, because genuineness is important to me, to project what is real and what is authentic. Okay, because we don't build connections otherwise. Imagine just the connections that we could build if we've just met each other based on a photograph. So look at the bottom photograph. Okay, I am in my little mask, so that gives you an idea of when this picture was taken, right? I'm with a little person, and I'm obviously not a young lady, so I'm probably the grandma, which I am. And I've got an old Led Zeppelin t-shirt on, which tells you a little bit about my generation. And it tells you that I like to go to amusement parks with my grandbabies. Okay, that says something about me, something that is genuine. What about the middle pictures? Okay, I go on social media and I see a ton of these pictures, these very happy family pictures. And I mean, we're building tree houses, we're all Leave It to Beaver and Donna Reed, and it's lovely. And I hope it's true. But most of us are a balance of things. What if your home is more like the battleground on the picture below the happy family? What if authentically what's going on is that there's a lot of yelling and screaming and a little baby in the middle of all this? Okay. If we knew each other face to face, even if we knew each other over the phone, I would have a better idea of which one of these families you're really from. And I might be able to help you as your friend. Okay. But I can't help you if you're not authentic. And there's no way that you and I can ever have an intimate relationship without authenticity. Okay. And what about the picture at the end? I absolutely love this. Uh, the guru guy. Okay, Mr. Spirituality. Spirituality has come back in fashion big time, and we got people levitating off the floor, and it's fabulous. But what if that same day you were at yoga levitating off the floor, you were also yelling, I don't know, at the guy at the Walmart for asking you to show your receipt? How spiritual is that? Want to talk about some false advertising? Okay. The guru guy's not yelling at the guy at the Walmart who's making minimum wage to ask you for your receipt. Okay. They're not doing Karen stuff. They're not being entitled. But you can even begin to buy your own BS. Okay. So you can start looking at your own social media profile, your brand. Okay. And really start to believe that that's who you are, that only these positive things, that I somehow disown the parts of myself that are negative. They no longer exist anymore. Okay. Bad news, they do. And that lack of authenticity is keeping you from growing and from developing meaningful relationships with people. And so I'm not suggesting that we necessarily take a picture of our kid holding their ears because we're arguing. But at least in our discussion and exchanges, let it be something that's more authentic. Okay. Okay, so life is what's going on when you're on social media. Take a look at this family that's at the dinner table. Okay. They're not even looking at that beautiful kid. And that kid is only going to be little and want to hang out with them for a very short period of time. And it's really sad. But mom and dad are on their phone, getting their supply, their approval, their adoration, their connections from that person that's on the phone instead of the person that's sitting in front of them. Okay. We don't seem to care about husband or wife's like, and the kid, well, the kid's just oblivious in this picture. Okay. What we are very concerned about what some person we may or may never meet face to face is thinking. We're worried about what's going on at work on your days off when, in fact, you need that time off to nurture outside relationships. Okay. What about the lady at the beach? She's never going to get that time back with her kids. I can tell you as a grandma that your babies grow up really, really quick. Okay. And there's a window of time that they really want to hang out with you. And then they grow up and they want to do stuff with their friends. And if you've done a good job, you build something that resembles sort of a friendship with them, with boundaries and perimeters, of course. And it's glorious, but you'll never get that time back. Please tell me what is going on in that phone that could possibly be more important than what's going on with those babies. And then finally, we've got a little one in the sandbox over there. And mom is laughing at some probably ridiculous TikTok video. Okay. And there's beauty that's right behind you. One of the most beautiful things in the world is right behind you. That little baby, those moments, those things that you can absolutely never recapture. Okay. And I don't know if you've noticed, but our lives have become like an advertisement, which goes back to this idea of the brand that I was talking about earlier. I would not be at all surprised if we don't snap a picture of the baby playing over there in the sandbox and then post it. Okay, that's consistent with a good brand. But dropping the phone and just playing with the baby, maybe not so much. When did we become so approval hungry? When did we all decide that we needed to be our own movie star in order to be okay in the world? When did we all become so important, self-important, So it's interesting because I think back to the early days of beepers and cell phones in particular. You know who had them? Doctors. So they could be paged. One of their patients needs to go into surgery and they can't get a hold of the doctor. That seems like a really, really good reason to have a beeper. Okay. Because what that person is doing is life or death. But then all of a sudden, we all became so very important. I know in the classes that I teach face to face, I had gone rounds with some of my millennial students who would always bring their cell phones to class and they wanted to check them. And I would say to them, please don't do that. I don't check my cell phone while you're talking. Okay. Um, what is more important than what is going on between you and me right now? Okay. And I would share with them, leave the cell phone in the car. And that's what I do. You can go out on your break. You can find out if somebody wants you to bring home Del Taco. You can do that on break or after class. And then one little smarty pants says to me, well, some of us have families that need to be able to get a hold of us, which you're not allowed to backhand people, but that's certainly what I was wanting to do in that moment. And I said, what, they don't know where you are? Your family doesn't know where you go to school? Your family doesn't know how to pick up a phone and call the university? It shut her down pretty quick, but I thought that it was really apropos that we've all become so important that everybody needs to be able to get a hold of us right away. And it's right away over BS most of the time. So I almost feel like that John Lennon talked about sort of life is what's going on when you're making other plans. I think life is what's going on when you're on social media. Okay. So if you're on social media, chances are you're really missing connection and you're really missing what's going on in life. So here are my suggestions, as all hope is certainly not lost. Okay. We want to look for the similarities between ourselves and other people and not the differences. So this takes us back a little bit to politics. Okay. The division, I think, is intentional. I'll just be candid. That's my personal opinion. If you look at old theory of Marxism and things, they talked about a triangle, right? And at the bottom of the triangle was the masses. In the middle of the triangle was the middle class. And then at the very top of the triangle are the elites. And what was proposed then was that you keep the war between the masses and the middle class. So the folks that are at the very bottom and the folks that are in the middle. Okay. And that way the elites remain untouchable. So the people who actually make policies, the people who are actually in control, okay, they remain untouchable. And you can see it. You can see the pitting against the masses in the middle class. Okay. When we talk about things such as social welfare, that's a really amazing scapegoat that certain parties use. Look at these people, they don't work, they're not doing anything, blah, 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 blah. Okay. First of all, that's not usually the case. But second of all, we're talking about 3% of our gross national product. Okay. Military, Social Security, all of those things take much bigger portions. I'm talking about like 3 to 5%. Okay. So it's kind of like going on a diet and focusing on the parsley on your plate and not on the steak and potatoes. Okay. But it creates this amazing division. So if it wasn't for you person out there on food stamps, then I would get to keep more of my tax money. It's not true. Okay. But it makes for a good story. But why do corporations receive massive tax breaks? The whole trickle down theory we proved was BS a long time ago. But we don't want to talk about that because that's not the narrative that we want to have. Okay. Crime in the inner cities. Talking about, I don't know, that it's all society's fault and nobody has personal accountability. Well, that's ridiculous as well. Okay. But see, most of us don't look at things in absurd extremes. Most of us look at things with regard to similarity or with regard to a gray area. So some people do these things. Some people do these things over here. And for most things, there's an exception to every rule. Okay, most people are capable of critical thinking beyond the black and white. Okay, so look for your similarities and not the differences. And that means you're going to need to stay away from the rhetoric. Okay, from those snotty little posts that I was showing you earlier. Okay, the ones that you're essentially looking at your friend and saying you're stupid because you think that. Well, that's going to go over like a fart in church. Okay, you're being offensive, you're being arrogant. And so we certainly want to sway away from that. We all need to take a deep breath and improve our impulse control. Okay, I don't know if you've noticed, but as a society, we have developed all the impulse control of a 13-year-old who's found his dad's gun. Okay, you bet your butt that the 13-year-old's out there, trying to shoot something because he's impulsive, because he's a kid. Adults are supposed to have impulse control. We're supposed to have a pause button where we can take information and impulses. Oh, I'm really, really pissed, and pause, and then look at the consequences and figure out what you're going to do from there. Okay. So those things that you say that you feel so entitled to say to another person when you're angry, usually because they posted something evocative, let's be honest, can you wait 24 hours? Can we demonstrate enough impulse control to wait 24 hours before we post? I think as adults, it's sort of the least that we can do. Okay. And usually by the end of 24 hours, your impulse to do it, you're going to do a little cost benefit analysis, and you probably won't be interested in saying it anymore. Okay. Because most of these little comments and these wars that we end up on social media, which is so ridiculous. Okay. It's always a good idea to fight with somebody you don't know over issues that you can't change. Most of the time, that impulse will be gone within 24 hours. So acknowledge and accept consequences to evocative posts. So we have a lot of victim posturing going on too, where everybody thinks they're being victimized by the other side. I just really hate that site stereotypes us, and I really hate that these people over here are always picking on us, and they're always being evocative, and they're always calling us names. Guess what? Everybody thinks that. If you're getting evocative responses, it's generally to an evocative post, unless you're in a relationship with somebody who simply wants to argue. Okay, and there's those people too. And I suggest you get them out of your social media forum, because your experience is going to be nothing but negative. But if you post something evocative, if you post something suggesting that liberals are libtards or all conservatives are racist, you're going to get it back in kind. Okay, and you need to own that. If you post something evocative, you're going to get evocative back. You post trash, you're going to get trash in return. You post peace, you're going to get peace in return. Now, there are exceptions. There are trolls. There are people, again, who I think the only energy they ever experience is that antagonistic rage, or the rage looking for a place. So they're just looking for you to say something to argue with. Okay. And in which case, again, they've got some personality stuff. You probably want to be moving on from that relationship anyway. Call, don't text. Nobody wants to call anymore. Okay. Texting is so much easier. Okay. And I know what the thought is, because we think we don't want to get tied up in a phone call, especially if you're really busy. Okay. And texting is so much easier, and texting does serve a really good purpose for things like, meet me at Denny's at noon for lunch. That's a good text. That's a solid text. It serves a function and purpose. So if I forget what time we were supposed to meet, I can look back and go, oh yeah, we're meeting at noon, and we're meeting at Denny's, and we're going to lunch. Okay. It was never intended to be used for evocative conversation, but we do it. Take subjects that should never, ever be discussed on that forum. And oh, I'm going to let them have it. But we won't pick up the phone, and that, my friends, is spineless. If you can't say it to their face or to their ear, you have no business saying it on a text. Okay? And the likelihood of things being misunderstood are huge when it comes to texts. Okay? And again, we say things in a way we would never normally say them. And I think it, in part, is because we're not culpable in the moment for what we evoked in another human being. So if I'm feeling angry or hurt and punitive towards you and I say something, I'm not necessarily going to see the look of pain that comes across your face when you read my text. Right? So we need to have a little bit of integrity when it comes to technology. Call when it's something personal, especially, oh my God, if it's multifaceted, please call and talk to somebody. And use your text again for those appointments and those things. Mom, come pick me up from the mall or whatever. Those are good texts. Very good. Okay, educate yourself in the art of debate. So I was blessed enough to belong to the debate team when I was in school. And it was very much point counterpoint. Okay. If you had to reduce yourself to personal attacks, you are considered a very poor debater. Okay. You're not going to make it very far on the debate team because you can't make an argument. And anytime we start attacking somebody's character, it means that we don't have much of an argument. Okay. If I want to shut you up, I can attack your character as opposed to attacking your facts or what you're saying to me. Okay. That's just ugly and antagonistic. That's not debating. Okay. That's think things my way, or I'm going to, I don't know, annihilate you emotionally, or I'm going to try to. Okay. That is not a sign of a debater. That's a sign, in fact, of a very small person. You want to do perspective taking. Okay, teach yourself to do perspective taking. And you should be doing this with your kids. Okay. You can start it off when they're little, like when you're driving in the car. You can start off a little story with your kid. Little Johnny and Susie were playing on the playground. What happened next? Have your kid come up with the second part of that story. Okay. So what do you think Johnny's perspective was? Why do you think Johnny did what he did? Why do you think Susie did what she did? And as your children get older, it's important to look at news stories with them and say, okay, now I want to hear the story from this person's situation, or from this person's perspective, and from the other person's perspective. So let's take an issue such as flag burning. Okay. From the person that is saying that it is, it's immoral, it's offensive to veterans. Tell me this from their perspective. And then tell me the story again from the perspective of a person who thinks that it's right to be able to do that because that signifies our freedom to have a difference in perspective. Right? Because that helps your children, and it helps us too, to understand things from another person's perspective. That's the only way that we're ever going to move on any of this stuff. But notice that socially, we remain very much divided. We want to create posts that evoke discussion, not division. So for example, I could create a post about the opioid crisis and the role of pharmaceutical companies. And I can post some of my research and put it out there and see what other people want to contribute. Now, there's a couple of ground rules. Okay. We're not arguing other people's research. Okay? We're presenting our own research. We're not doing an us and them. You don't get to agree or like or dislike somebody else's perspective. We're just going to hear everyone's perspective. Okay? Because when you're not defensive is when you actually might be open to learning something. Okay. And then there's spiritual considerations. So I ask you to really consider, is your behavior on social media consistent with the spirituality that you postulate that you have? Okay. Would I know that you're a Christian based on your posts, based on the way that you talk to people, based on the feelings that you elicit in others, based on your contempt, or based on your love? Spiritual considerations and morality belong on social media just like everywhere else. Okay. And if you're not a spiritual person and you don't have those considerations, then you don't need to worry. Be evocative. So I'm going to take us back to a really old prayer for those of you that do have and follow some sort of spirituality and principles. Okay. And this is the prayer of Saint Francis of Assisi. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in the giving that we receive. It is in the pardoning that we are pardoned. And it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. So what are your posts sowing? Are you sowing love, animosity, hatred, contempt? Are you bound and determined that everybody needs to understand things from your perspective? Or are you seeking to understand things from someone else's perspective? See, we all want to be understood, but that's going to start with seeking to understand somebody else. And so if we're putting out posts and things that are evocative and contemptuous, are we really following the principles that we presume to believe in? Okay. And these rules, again, apply on social media. I know that there's like a terrific amount of anonymity, okay, on social media. And so I think sometimes people feel safer to say and do things that they normally wouldn't. But again, if you're practicing some sort of spiritual principles, God knows, okay? And we're supposed to be consistent. So I'm going to end with a story. We've got two little kids on the playground, all right? And we've got one kid saying, look, the sky is beautiful and it's blue. And we've got another little kid saying, no, the sky it's overcast and it's gray. And they start arguing, right? Saying, you're just so stupid. I mean, clearly the sky is blue. All right. No, it's not. Clearly the sky is gray. I don't know what you're thinking. You're wrong. You're stupid. Your parents are stupid. I mean, kids get real, they're like us, unfortunately, what we've modeled. And then the wise teacher steps in and he says, boys, turn around. So the child that had seen the sky as blue, once he turned around, he saw that storm clouds were coming in and the sky appeared quite gray. And the kid who had seen the gray skies, once he turned around, he saw that it was all clear on the other side and the sky appeared quite blue. That's perspective taking. Okay. We can be so sure, have all the anecdotal evidence in the world that we are right. But what if we take an opportunity to really understand something from someone else's perspective? Okay. We're getting used to the social media thing, but we got to do it better. I know that you see the problems that are occurring in families. Please always let it be more important that you're getting likes from your family than from strangers. May God be with you.